Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Cordula Book. Here you'll find the best tips on how to stay safe online. In today's video, I want to introduce you to a powerful password manager that almost no one knows about yet. It's primarily aimed at professional businesses, but also at individual people who deeply value data privacy and want to manage their own passwords themselves. But actually, it's especially designed for those who are well versed in the world of IT. And as I said before, it is for those who want to have full control, the absolute maximum control over all their sensitive passwords. Unfortunately, I can't seem to log into my HP laptop right here. And that was also one of the main reasons I decided to stick with Keeper. Passport is just very complicated. You always have to manually enter the key multiple times, and in this case, that key is the master password, and Passport is very strict about it. It even checks exactly which web browser you're using, yes. Then you have to have an email sent to you, and only through that email can you log in. And every time you generate a new password, you have to enter the master password again. And of course, you also have to choose a correspondingly strong key. With most password managers, a simple master password is allowed. Here, however, you actually have to use a strong passphrase. And I am absolutely convinced that Passport is one of the safest and strongest password managers out there. And that's what I want to talk to you about in this video. One of the most significant factors that speaks in its favor is definitely that it's open source, that it places a very heavy emphasis on promoting secret management, and that it specifically targets a wide range of businesses, entrepreneurs of all sizes. By the way, you can also view the website in French and English. For me, it's easier to think in German here. Yes, this is what the interface looks like. This means that you can easily organize your content by creating a variety of different folders here. You can set up different categories to help manage your workflow. For example, professional business projects or essential security protocols. And of course, you can also securely share all of your passwords with others on your team. You can also create different groups here and assign specific tags to each entry. Of course, the whole thing does not look quite as modern or sleek as Keeper or some other competitors. 1Password, or whatever they're all called, I can make it bigger. Here we can see it quite well too. If I were to log in now, it would be exactly the same interface, just with my own passwords. So I think this gives a very good insight here. What also bothered me about the password manager was actually that no logos are generated here. No logos from Gmail or Amazon are generated here. You can choose the color of these icons yourself. You can assign these icons yourself. But in my opinion, it just doesn't look as stylish as the interface of Keeper, which really makes an impression. And I've already made a video about this where I definitely recommend Keeper for private individuals and also for companies. But this password manager is now specifically aimed at entrepreneurs. Of course, a private individual can also use this tool, particularly individuals who value their personal data privacy and want to host their own passwords independently, for instance, by utilizing a hosting provider such as Hostinger or through another similar service. I think it's called Netcap, so there are various options available. You also know this from NNN. And there's also the option to use the cloud. I'll talk more about that in a moment. If you don't want to host it yourself, the cloud is, of course, the more expensive option. But you can still use your password just like with any other password manager. Most password managers rely on the cloud, and it works here according to the same principle, of course. The advantage here is also that very strong passwords can be generated. I mean, pretty much every password manager can do that, but I think here it's on another level, more secure. But in principle, it's relatively similar. Here you can set up these logins. Let's stick with Amazon and Gmail as examples. You can then generate a new password or assign an existing one. And of course, you also have the convenient option, for example, to seamlessly migrate passwords from Keeper and transfer them one-to-one. And as I said, what makes Passport truly unique and versatile here is that you can create multiple subcategories and folders. And of course, you can also securely share passwords with others in your team, for example. So I'll just resize this back to normal now. Another point in favor of Passport is, of course, that it is compliant with data protection regulations, namely the GDPR. This is interesting for anyone who does business in Europe or is based in Europe. It is also made in Europe. I believe its headquarters are in Luxembourg, but as mentioned, you can also use the cloud in Germany. Yes, it is definitely a certified password manager, a very secure password manager, but a relatively unknown one. I first heard about it in the CT magazine, where European alternatives were suggested. And honestly, I didn't know a single one of them. Because, if you're familiar with the big providers like Keeper, 1Password, and LastPass, and apart from Pass, which I did know, there are actually very few options in Europe. And then, of course, being able to manage and host all of your content yourself, right here is definitely a significant and incredible luxury. Yes, here they're now advertising how many people are already using it. And yes, it does build a significant amount of trust, I would say, seeing who is using it and which reputable companies are already relying on it. And then we also have the option here to securely and easily share these passwords, as I just mentioned, with others. Your team can't stop share login credentials, passwords. It enables you to do so securely. This isn't a special feature. For example, GoodPass also offers the ability to securely share passwords with others. I believe that's available with virtually every single one of the password managers out there. And as I said, it's no longer considered to be a unique selling point anymore. But there are definitely a few very specific features included here that speak in favor of this password manager. It's secure by design, and is fully end-to-end encrypted. Besides this password manager, RoutePass definitely has it as well, to my knowledge. Keeper also uses this end-to-end encryption based on military-grade AES 256-bit encryption. I believe that's what it's called, the standard encryption for all password managers. And this password manager enables teams of any size to share and view all relevant information. Here again, we can see the folder structure. For example, in this area, we would have individual clients, staff members, and various ongoing projects, as well as servers and system administrators, or even content management systems, all of which you can easily set up and manage right here. CRM, no, that means content management systems. The main focus here is on customer management. You can see that here as well. But of course, you can also manage passwords here for all other projects and topics. This is not a unique feature either. Besides passwords, it also offers roots, a passport, and the ability to work with multiple folders. And I think that's great, practical, and very clear. I have one folder for cloud storage, then I have a folder for project management, tools, and so on. Exactly. An entrepreneur for an entrepreneurial critical solution developed by modern engineering teams. I wanted to add that as well. I think I already mentioned it in one of my articles. And also in the last video, it is specifically aimed at IT teams, developer teams, teams that know what they're doing. I wouldn't recommend it to every entrepreneur. It's really intended for situations where you can actually host these passwords yourself, where you have IT knowledge. And for me personally, it's too complicated. Well, I do like not having to deal with different things like installing Linux or something like that. But hosting this thing myself and managing everything on my own, it's not really something I need to do. Even if it is 100% open source, completely open source, actually. And even if you really can host it for free in the cloud, you're still responsible for it yourself. So here we have the password management. Here you can see it again quite nicely in the video, how the whole thing works, how the whole process goes. Right here, it is clearly explained entirely without any sound, exactly how you can set this whole thing up for yourself. You can see it right here. It works in a way so that you can easily assign text, create various new folders, and of course, you can also specifically search for your saved passwords. That definitely works quite well for everyone. Privileged access management. Effectively manage all administrative and root accounts with highly granular permissions, strictly enforce just-in-time access and the principle of least privilege, and ensure immediate revocation even at the cryptographic level, all handled completely securely. Yes, the point here is that it is a very secure password manager, that it uses very strong encryption, but this standard encryption, this military-grade encryption, is actually used by all password managers. Only NordPass uses a different encryption method, but the common standard encryption is definitely still secure at this time. I already mentioned that in my last video. It is still secure right now. One day, when quantum computers arrive, maybe in 10 or 15 years, it might be possible to crack this bit encryption, this military-grade encryption, but for now, there's no need to worry about it. Exactly. So right here, you can clearly see the whole process once again, how you can easily log in, create passwords, or rather first create specific folders, manage those folders, delete any unnecessary folders, and then carefully assign tags and groups accordingly. The secret management here, Keeper has that too, and that's something I really appreciate about Keeper, secret notes. But by now, so many password managers offer that as well. I think GoodPass does too. I've tested several. This is about secret management, secret notes, secret documents, things that no one else should know about. It's simply the case that many password managers now offer this feature. Control and audit. Here we have it again. Adjust the passport settings to match your company's policy. Yes, you can set this up very individually and configure it very thoroughly. There are really a lot of options here to make things even more secure. But as is always the case with security, there's also the possibility of locking yourself out. That has actually happened to me before with LastPass and also with several WordPress plugins. And to be honest, I think it just happened to me again that I locked myself out of Passport because it's just really annoying to have to enter this password, this master password, multiple times every single time, and always in the same browser. Otherwise, there are times when it simply might not work at all. Yes, those are basically the significant benefits that truly and definitely stand out with the password. Multi-factor authentication is already conveniently included everywhere you look. Here, you can easily restore your entire account right here. Secure password management. All of these different things we've just gone over together, that you can host it yourself. Exactly. And secure collaboration is also listed separately here. We've already talked about that as well. This is simply about making sure that if you have a team or an IT team, you can manage passwords securely so that everyone has access. And I still hear stories, let me put it that way, of companies managing their passwords in Excel. For heaven's sake, that's an absolute no-go. I think Excel is great, but for password management, it's about the worst option, or at the very least, there are definitely better ways to manage passwords than using Excel. And then we come to another crucial aspect to consider here. Tailored specifically to your unique workflows, you can efficiently organize all your passwords in personal or shared folders and include additional text notes, comments, and detailed descriptions. Yes, this is a helpful summary once again. Here again, you have the option to further subdivide things into subfolders. So, for example, clients, it would basically be, for instance, in web design, essentially for cybersecurity, depending on the case. This is, for example, from my own business, but of course, you can apply this to any other business as well. Or clients. With Fiverr, you can further subdivide things here, and of course, you can do the same with other items as well. So here, for example, it would be content management systems, password management, and so on. And of course, also the admins. This is also quite interesting for entrepreneurs. So let's say the boss is named Marcus Müller. He can then log in as an admin, and he has an employee named Heike, let's say Hoffman. And she can also log into the system, and there is another employee named Nadine, so-and-so, and the three of them are then the designated admins. And when these specific admins have full access to the password manager, they are then responsible for managing all of these passwords, including adding new ones, deleting old ones, and so on. This can also include others in the bring others on board, but the three I just mentioned will be the admins as an example. I just couldn't think of a last name right now. Those are all German last names again. That's just what popped into my head. But it doesn't matter. In principle, you can see it right here too. Ada Lovelace and the brilliant Hedy Lamarr. That's also super English. I have no idea. It's Indian. But the point here is that you can work with multiple admins and also with multiple sub-accounts and multiple tags. And yes, it's also possible to share things immediately via the inbox. But that's also something that really bothers me about Passbolt, that everything or almost everything goes through the inbox. Sharing passwords and, as I said, every login as well. It's incredibly tedious and cumbersome that every time I need to log in, I have to manually go into Thunderbird, open the application, and then log into Brave or Firefox through Thunderbird, before I can finally get logged into my account. But well, that's simply an extra layer of security. Being able to use it from anywhere is definitely a positive. You can use the Pathway Manager on your business phone or on your smartphone. It works on the tablet and, of course, in Brave and any other browser. There is the extension and the app integration. Enhance your security posture with private keys. Yes, it's just that this is no longer a unique selling point. Gutenpass now also has these private keys that you can generate. But I think not every single person needs that. And Keeper is a relatively simple password manager, or let's say it's intentionally kept simple, specifically designed for several target groups. Here, it's really specifically about professional companies and also people who really have a deep understanding of IT and password management. And less about those who just want to manage their passwords relatively easily. Let's take another look at the security of your organization. Your company is only as strong as the weakest password of its users. It's time to say goodbye to passwords with randomly generated private keys. But I think that's a bit nonsense because Keeper, unfortunately, I have to say it again, and PutinPass, as well as all other password managers, also generate random passwords. I think I've already made a video about that before. The only ones who don't generate random passwords are Chatty and Cloud. And I would also advise against generating passwords with these AI tools. Random passwords simply means passwords generated by a random process. And you can also set it up so that you want a password with 21 characters, or a password with 200 characters, or a passphrase made up of several sentences. I only want uppercase and lowercase letters, or only lowercase letters. You can set that in any password manager, and with that, you can really generate secure passwords. As I said, every password manager offers this feature. And here, it's simply about being able to generate extremely secure keys, but in my opinion, it's sufficient if you use secure passwords. We are still in the age of passwords, and for now, there is no need to worry about alternatives. Most people will continue to rely on passwords, on standard passwords. And now let's move on to the real benefits. Randomly generated private keys. Yes, I just mentioned that. As I said, every password manager does this, which makes sense. Passwords need to be random, they need to be strong, they need to consist of multiple characters, special characters, uppercase and lowercase letters, and several elements. Things that you can't easily remember. Sorry, things that you can't just memorize. Like many people's favorite password, the last summer vacation or our summer party 2024. This is not a joke. That's really how it is. And many companies actually use passwords like that. And recently, I read in CT magazine about a secretary who used a password. What was it? Something with ladybug in any case. I would never have thought of that. And the hacker was about to give up because it was actually a really well chosen password. He had already tried 99% or 98% of the possibilities, let's say 98%, and he thought, I can't do it. I've really tried everything. It actually wasn't such a difficult password, but you can see how tricky it can be. That's what happens when it's not just ladybug, but something like ladybug. For example, in summer 2018, just as an example now, that's not a super strong password, but still the combination has to be exactly right. And he just has to try everything. They then go through this dictionary method and check if that could be it. And if it's even a little more complicated, it already gets difficult. But in the end, he still managed to crack the password and gain access to all the company's logins, but it proved to be a significantly challenging task. End-to-end encryption is definitely included. And the vast majority of password managers have that as well, just like the standard security modifiers and two-factor authentication, which by default provides an additional robust layer of security and protection for the private key. To be honest, I'm not a fan of it, and the whole thing isn't actually that much more secure, because nowadays it can also be intercepted via SMS or email. Yes, it is an extra layer of protection, but as I said, I've also had the experience with LastPass in the past where I completely locked myself out. Protection against brute force, protection against brute force attacks. This is something that Passbolt is really trying to establish as a unique selling point. Yes, and it's resistant to phishing. I don't know of any Passbolt person who advertises with that, and of course that means they are specifically targeting businesses. Those who place a high value on security. And I think in terms of encryption, it's definitely very strong. With it, you can, let's say, reduce brute force attacks, maybe not completely fend them off. That always depends on the context. And phishing resistant, yes, again, it depends on the context. So if someone still clicks on a phishing email, then even the best password and the best password manager won't help. Nothing. But basically, what Password wants to convey here is that they are really, really secure, that they truly offer protection against brute force attacks, as I just mentioned, with the dictionary method or by guessing passwords and also by intercepting emails, like when someone says, I want to directly steal your master password now. I think that in this case, a very strong layer of protection, a very strong encryption comes into play. And the one-to-one encryption, password encryption, each password individually very well, and in a detailed content-based manner to ensure that the compromise of one password has no impact on the others. Very good. Why? Because LastPass simply didn't do that in the past. That means only the master password was encrypted. And the vaults, as far as I know, and when these vaults were compromised and stolen, The hackers managed to successfully decrypt and crack them open to steal several million in Bitcoin because it simply was, unfortunately, not nearly as secure and robust as it should have been. This interoperable password is based on a JSON API, and it specifically utilizes interoperable cryptography. Yes, that also has to do with the encryption again, that it really is a very strong encryption. And then we also have administrator-controlled recovery mechanisms. This is about having the ability to create backups and restore various passwords. But this also exists, as I said, in other password managers. And it's also good that this recovery function exists. I actually experienced this situation quite recently. I was with RoboForm for a long time and then switched to Keeper. And I accidentally left some passwords in RoboForm for logging into my websites. And I was grateful that this recovery function existed when I had already moved them to the trash, because otherwise I would have had to set a new password for every website, for every WordPress site. Exactly. And with that, we've actually reached the end here. Secure, private, and compliant collaboration. Here you have flexible hosting once again. You can also cancel at any time. I'll talk about that in a moment. Strong traceability, enforcement of the principle of least privilege. Yes, these are just some of the points. Nice lists. Customizable security policies are relevant. Exactly. You can really configure very well what you want and make this password manager even more secure. And the data encryption here is also quite effective. Verifiable password well code is open source, which is also very good. You can always check what's in this code because it's open and it's regularly audited by third parties. Keeper also has this, and I think that's very good. That means it is regularly checked for vulnerabilities. Regarding the pricing, as I just mentioned, it is specifically aimed at local businesses. That means you can use it for free, even for personal use, and you can also host it yourself. Host it. That would be the self-hosted version, which is free of charge. All benefits are included here. That means open source. Password management, sharing, private sharing, and folders, user and group management, authentication, secret keys, additional factor authentication, browser extension, open APIs, role-based access control, password expiration, and community support. And in addition, we have the custom version here. This is really relevant for larger companies. We also have an option here for small and medium-sized businesses. €4.50 per month, a bit cheaper than the private plan. Everything included, all features included that are also available over here. And the whole thing can be billed either annually or monthly. This refers to the yearly rate here, I believe, yes. You can start a free trial here, which I also did. It expires the day after tomorrow, 7 days, and you can try the whole thing without obligation and without a credit card. I think that's really cool and very generous. And as I said here, it was only the cloud-based version, by the way, in US dollars. So that means it would be about $5 for business via the cloud. So that means you manage it in the cloud and pay about $5 per month. Here too, the same features are included as in the annual plan. You can also choose to host the whole thing yourself once again right here. But as I previously mentioned, you will need a reliable third-party provider for it to work. However, this specific option here would be completely free of charge, providing you with unlimited access. And that's definitely something that speaks in favor of Passbolt. So here is my final conclusion for this video. I can highly recommend this password manager to all companies and to all businesses that want a very secure password manager and want to host their password manager themselves. And especially for business owners and entrepreneurs who are based in Europe or the United Kingdom, and who value having their password manager securely hosted and located in Europe, more specifically, that is to say, in Luxembourg, or rather in Belgium. And of course, you can also set it up so that you host it yourself, for example, in Germany. I can highly and confidently recommend this password manager to anyone who values being able to manage their passwords themselves and places a very great importance on maintaining their personal data privacy. We also have, once again, that means you are in possession of this data with full data sovereignty. And I know that this is of great interest to many people who truly value data protection and privacy, who use browsers like Reply, who don't want to be tracked, and who want to know exactly where their data ends up. And honestly, I can completely understand that. For those people, I can highly recommend this password manager because it's actually one of the few password managers alongside KeePass where I can say you have full control over it. Full control over what happens with the password. And yes, that these passwords can also be managed securely. Thank you very much for your attention and see you in the next video.